My name is Jessica Frazier, and I'm the director of the Phoenix Center. So the way that we tend to identify interpersonal violence is within an umbrella term to encompass sexual assault, domestic violence, or relationship violence, or stalking. Anything under that umbrella would include elements of power and control and are never the fault of the person who is being victimized. It's really difficult to have accurate statistics on interpersonal violence because most of the statistics are based on what's reported to law enforcement. We know that over 50% of people who are impacted never report to the police. But statistics that we are able to capture and look at would indicate that women ages 18 to 24 are at the highest risk of being perpetrated against by men ages 16 to 40 in age range. So 1 in 4 women will statistically be impacted by interpersonal violence at some point in their life, and roughly 1 in 18 men. So I think that breaks down to be about 3% of men have reported being victimized at some point in their life. But that's a very low representation of who is actually being impacted directly. Interpersonal violence can impact people in a variety of ways. It can impact their basic functioning, such as eating, sleeping, being able to get through a day as they would normally before being victimized. Oftentimes it can lead people to feel isolated, feel as though they have no supports. Depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder are at that extreme of that spectrum of symptoms that somebody might experience as a result. Just as these things are individualized as to how they are perpetrated, how they impact people is also very subjective. Oftentimes people who have been perpetrated against would prefer the term survivor. We, as a society, tend to attach some negative connotations to the term victim as a passive term, feeling helpless, feeling hopeless. So I've heard many people who have experienced these things really feel more comfortable with the term survivor because that may imply strength, resiliency, and qualities that we would more positively associate to how people overcome these things versus how they are negatively impacted long term. Slut shaming can encompass a lot of different things, but it's really this idea of vilifying or shaming women for having any sexual identity. So by the way that they dress, maybe by indicating that they have sex or are interested in sexual activity, or may in some way be implied to have a certain personality or persona based on how they dressed or present in society. It's really a negative label that is destructive in terms of victimizing women for taking control of their body and their sexuality. So I think that it really represents a double standard of condoning or making it normal for men to have a sexual identity, to be interested in themselves as a sexual being, which is a very natural part of being human, while also telling women that they don't have the same permissions or allowances to express themselves in those ways. So it really creates a double standard and can lead to a lot of objectification that women experience. By objectifying women, we make them less of a person, and oftentimes that can lead to violence that can occur. I think something that we can see very prevalent within our media, within the way that we advertise certain products, alcohol ads oftentimes will couple very sexualized image of a woman, and those are things that really give a very skewed message around a woman's role, coupling them as an object in those vehicles as well. I think that's a societal problem that we have. My hope is that sometime in my life that we will really change the questions that we ask around interpersonal violence. So more often than not, I hear questions like, why did she stay with her abusive partner? Why did she go back? Why was she out at a bar? Why was she dressed that way? Excuses or reasons as to why women are assaulted. I think that adds to that slut shaming, that if we believe that somebody deserved what happened to them, it's much more easily excusable within our general society and within our court systems. I hope that we start asking questions like, why did this person think it was okay? Where did they get the message that this person's short skirt was an invitation for them to be raped? because we really focus a lot of our attention on how the victim is impacted, how the victim behaves, how the victim, it's a way that we really allow these things to continue to happen. The Phoenix and Urban area, we provide support, intervention, and prevention services for issues related to interpersonal violence for the area campus community. Our main goal is to prevent these things from happening. However, we also provide support services to students or faculty or staff who may be impacted by these issues currently or previously in their life. So in terms of services, that might include advocating for somebody academically. So ensuring that being impacted by interpersonal violence does not then have a secondary impact of having a negative influence on their education. So if we can help students stay in school, be successful in their academics, even though they have been unpredictably violated during their semester, we can buffer some of those negative consequences. So we try to engage the campus community in dialogue around interpersonal violence. What is an interpersonal violence? How can we have conversations about these things to have a broader understanding? What can we do to provide people with tools to intervene? How can we be cognizant of what media does in terms of objectifying women and maybe influencing or perpetuating interpersonal violence? So those are some of the ways that we really try to be creative in getting messages out there. When I watch the news and I hear a story about a woman who is assaulted or killed, and I can hear in the story the elements of domestic violence because the perpetrator is an ex-partner, a current boyfriend, or an ex-husband, that we're not calling it domestic violence. So people don't have a very accurate sense of how prevalent these things are showing up in our news stories or in our society. So conversation is the first step. And I also think that ensuring that people have tools of what to do, how to help, how to support a friend, a family member, a neighbor, somebody that you drive by on the streets that you definitely know something's wrong. Because I think it takes a collective effort and a collective conscience around these issues to really start making some efforts and some progress at preventing them.